everybody. I want to welcome you tonight to our midweek huddle at Promise Church. So glad that you're joining us tonight. This is a time where we're able to open our Bibles, maybe just kind of gather around your phone or your iPad, catch this maybe while you're cooking dinner, eating dinner, whatever you're doing at this hour. I'm glad that you are with us. I am so excited about some of the things that are happening around the church. It's really a great season. We're getting ready for our life groups. It's going to be happening on the 28th of this month, and we are going to be going right into our Easter season. Easter is early this year. I've been working on a message series as we lead up into the Easter season here, so it's a great time to get plugged into church. If you haven't come back, it's a great time to come back. If you've kind of disconnected a little bit, it's a great time to plug back in through life groups and our Sunday services. And even more than that, we're doing our first Wednesday live in the house here. So we're doing the second, third, and fourth Wednesday, just kind of like this. But the first Wednesday, we're all gathering together. So I'd love to see you plug in this new season. So I want to just kind of go through something with you tonight. If you have your Bible, open it up. I'm going to just go through 2 Corinthians chapter 12, just a few verses here. Paul says something very interesting. It's something that a lot of times people will mention about him. And I want to kind of look at it tonight. You might know about this once I start reading. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm going to read from verse 7 to verse number 10. Paul, writing to the church at Corinth, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, says, "Therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me." So there it is right there. He says, I was given something in my flesh that he calls a thorn. He says, a messenger of Satan to torment me. He said in verse 8, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Last verse, he says, that is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. All right, so I see a lot of people joining us on here tonight. I want to just ask you, say hello to somebody in the chat. Push the like button. It shows it to other people anytime on Facebook or Instagram. You hit that like button, it's going to, that algorithm is going to show it to other people. So if you haven't already, hit the like button, say hello to somebody in the chat. And I want to just start out with this. What do you think that thorn was? Paul says, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan. It's tormenting me. What do you think that thorn was? I'd be interested to see people in the chat there. Give me some kind of feedback. What do you think that thorn was? A lot of people have talked about it. I've heard people say that it was a physical ailment that he had. Maybe something with his eyes, maybe some other type of physical ailment, because he said it was a thorn in his flesh. Let me hear from somebody maybe, what do you think that it is? I've heard people say, Paul was single. I've heard people say maybe it was something that he was wanting companionship, maybe. Of course, he talked about that at other times. But there's something there, some thorn that he had, some hindrance, some thing that he had that he said was tormenting him. I like the fact that Paul never really defines it. I like the fact that he never really tells us exactly what it is. Of course, people are going to try to talk about it, and it's interesting to maybe try to figure out what it was. But Paul never told us what it was. Maybe it's something private. Maybe it's something that he battled in his flesh. He did say that it was something that tormented him, something that haunted him in some way, something that bothered him, something from Satan. I see Richard Schonk, he's got a great one there, that maybe it was how he persecuted the church. That's a great idea there, maybe something in his past. But nevertheless, no matter what it was, he never told us what it was. And I believe he did that because all of us have a thorn that we wish would go away. We all have something that we wish God would fix. We wish God would change. We wish God would heal or make right or whatever it is. And maybe you've gone through times of praying about it, asking the Lord to fix that. Maybe it's tormented you. Maybe you've cried over it. Maybe you've petitioned God for it. Maybe you've gone through seasons of fasting about it. We just came through our 21 days of prayer and fasting. And what I want to talk about tonight is, what do you do when you ask God to do something about that thorn, whatever it is in your life, whatever it is that causes you to worry, causes you to fear or pain points, or whatever it is, that thing that you wish would go away? What do you do when you've asked God to do something about it and God seems to be silent? What I want to tell you, let me just ask the chat there. Maybe you tell me, what do you do when you feel like God is being silent? What do you do when you feel like God has not fixed this situation? What do you do when you feel like something needs to change, something needs to shift, but yet God is silent about it? So, here's what I would say. Please answer if you got something there. Don't let me jump it for you. But here's what I would say. When it seems like God is being silent, He's not really being silent. When God doesn't answer yes, I would say that God answers every prayer. He either answers yes, or He answers no, or He answers not yet. And I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. So, I'm seeing some answers in the chat. I see Christina, I see Hannah. Hey, Hannah, it's good to see you on here. Keep faith and work on it. That's right. I love that. So I want to look at Paul's faith here. Paul's faith, it says that 3 times he sought the Lord about this. The Apostle Paul is on display in really an amazing way here. Oftentimes we'll see in the Bible, and we'll see it from Jesus' teaching especially, that there's something effective about being persistent in prayer. Remember, the Lord said, ask and you shall receive. He said, seek and you'll find. He said, knock and it shall be opened unto you. So there's something about prayer that we are supposed to just ask, and maybe we ask again, and maybe we ask again, and that's probably right. Maybe we knock and we don't get an answer. We knock again. We don't get an answer, and we knock again. Maybe we're seeking for God to do something and it doesn't happen. So we seek again. It doesn't happen. And we seek again. Jesus told this parable, this interesting parable. Theologians will call it the parable of importunity, but I've never heard the word importunity outside of this. But what it means is it's about the guy that was knocking on the door. And they were already asleep inside the house, but he just kept knocking on the door. And Jesus said, they didn't answer the door because he wanted to. He answered the door because the guy kept knocking in the middle of the night. Then the Lord gives us this parable of this widow that just kept going before an unrighteous judge. He wasn't even a good judge, but finally he heard the widow's plea and was favorable to her, not because he was a good judge. He was an unrighteous judge. But Jesus said he did it because he got tired of her persistent petition. So the implication is, how much more would a good judge, our Heavenly Father, do for us? And so we know that consistent and persistent faith and prayer and fasting is so effective. However, on the other side, I want you to see this from Paul tonight. He was persistent. He was consistent. It said he prayed about this 3 times. Now, I don't think that he prayed. He said this was a thorn. He said this was tormenting him. I don't think that he just kind of prayed 3 times like, a passing prayer 3 times, like an elevator prayer. Like, I'm getting on the elevator, I'm on the first floor, I'm going up to the 3rd floor, and I push the 3rd floor, and I just say, hey, Lord, would you maybe get rid of this thorn? Okay, the door's opening up, and I'm on my way to the office. No. When he says I prayed 3 times, this was big enough that he mentioned it to the church at Corinth. I have to believe this was 3 deep, intense seasons, chapters of his life, seasons of prayer and fasting and petitioning God, crying out to the Lord, seeking Him. It was the number one thing on his prayer list. Every day he's calling on the name of the Lord. And he goes through a whole season and it doesn't happen. And he lets it pass. And he just suffers with the thorn for a while. And then all of a sudden, faith rises up in him again. And he goes into a second season of deep, passionate intercession, intense fasting and praying and calling on God. Now he's in a second season of that asking and seeking and knocking. And as he goes through that second season of asking, seeking, knocking, praying, fasting, petitioning, intense intercession, it doesn't happen. And his energy to pray for that in that second season begins to wane and dissipate. And he suffers with that thorn for a little while longer. And all of a sudden, faith rises again. He goes into a third season of intense intercession, prayer, fasting, petitioning, asking, seeking, and knocking. But in that third season of seeking God for removal of that thorn, it doesn't happen. And at the end of that season, Paul makes a decision. You know, the disappointment of not having a prayer answered can destroy a lot of people's faith. It could have destroyed his faith. No doubt it's destroyed a lot of people's faith. They say, I serve God. I do this and I've done that and I worship and I go to church on Sunday and I tithe and I sing in the choir and I do kids ministry and I do all these things. God owes that to me. And we forget sometimes that God doesn't serve us, but we serve God. And so we can't let those things derail our faith. But at the end of that third season, Paul said, okay, I've asked God to deal with this. And 3 times, God sent back the same message. He heard my prayer. He knows my heart. He knows that I would still want Him to answer that prayer. But since I can't get it my way, this is what he decided. Since I can't get it my way, I'm just going to trust His way. And he said, I'm going to boast in my weakness because it's ultimately going to show His strength. And He'll get the glory. Because when I'm weak, it shows that He's strong. And when it shows that His grace is enough. His grace is sufficient. And this is actually a deeper level of faith. It does take faith to keep on knocking. But I'll tell you that it takes a deeper level of faith that after you've knocked and knocked and knocked and knocked, and then after you've gone through a second season of knocking and knocking and knocking, and after you've gone through a third season of knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking, I think it actually takes a deeper level of faith when you can say, Lord, you know I've been seeking for an answer. I went into 3 intense seasons of asking and praying, and you know that I have faith that you can do it. And you know that my desire for my heart is still there. But my faith is not in my way. My trust is ultimately in your way. And this faith that Paul had in that moment is actually very reminiscent of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane when He's praying. And He says, if it's possible, let this cup pass for me. But nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And this is a deep and a mature, this is a strong and abiding faith. That just any old storm, any old wind is not gonna uproot. This is actually a next level faith from accepting God's will in our life. You know, this is a next level faith from when somebody doesn't accept God's will and they keep on asking and keep on seeking and keep on knocking. And they've gone through 10 seasons of it, and now they're bitter, and now their faith is shook. Because it seems like there's a place, and Paul said for him it was after 3 seasons of praying. It seems as if there's a place where we should just say, okay, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. I think there's a place where we just say, Lord, you know I've prayed about it. You know I have faith for you to do it. You know where the desire of my heart is. But okay, Lord, not my will, but your will be done. I remember in the book of Samuel, in actually the reign of Samuel as the prophet, I remember when the people of Israel kept saying, God, we want a king like the other nations. And God's answer was no. No, you don't want another king, human king like the other nations. I am your king. That's what's so special about the nation of Israel. I'm your king. And I've set up priests, prophets, and judges to govern underneath me. I'm the King of Kings. And they said, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We want a human king. We want to be like the other nations. God says, no, you don't want a human king. They're gonna tax you. They're gonna send your boys to war. You don't want a human king. I am your king. Don't reject me. They said, no, we want a human king. We want to be like the other nations. And finally God said, okay, you can have a human king. This isn't my perfect will for you. It would be better for me to be your king. It would be better to have the priests, prophets, and judges that I've set up for you. But I'll tell Samuel, go ahead and anoint King Saul as the king. But it seems to me that there should be a place where we all should just say, okay, Lord, I've prayed about it 3 times, but not my will, but your will be done. And Paul had strong enough faith to do that and say, I'm trusting in God's answer. If his answer is yes, okay. If his answer is no, okay. If his answer is not yet, okay. Faith says whatever answer God gives me, I still believe that he's a good God, and nothing is going to shake my faith to believe that ultimately God is working out everything for my good. He's working together everything for my good. And I just want to tell you tonight, work that out in your mind now, before the valley comes, before the storm comes, before that thorn comes, before the season of disappointment comes. Go ahead and work that out. I've made that resolute in my mind that no matter what I go through, God is still God. He's still a good God. He's still working on my behalf. I still trust Him. I still know He has a plan for me, not to hurt me, but to prosper me. From Jeremiah, we know that God had a plan for us before we were even born, and that it's a good plan, not to hurt us, but to prosper us. And so go ahead and make that up in your mind now, before that valley time comes, before that season of disappointment comes. God is a good God, and if His answer is yes, I'm going to say thank you. If His answer is no, I'm going to say, okay, not my will, but your will be done. If His answer is not yet, okay, Lord, I'm going to wait on your perfect timing. And so I want to give you just 2 things tonight. When you have a thorn that God doesn't remove, when you have a situation that God doesn't fix or cure or heal or repair, when He doesn't say yes, I believe His answer is either not yet or no. When His answer is not yet or no, here's what's really happening. I'll take the not yet one first. When God says not yet, write this down. When God says not yet, it's because He's allowing it. God allows things. Doesn't mean He sent it. Doesn't mean He caused it. It means He allowed it. Plain and simple. He allowed it. He's allowed us all to have free will. If somebody, if I wanted to go home tonight and order 25 pizzas and eat till I'm sick, throwing up, it's probably not God's perfect will for my life. But He would allow me to do that. If I went home tonight and went out and maxed out all of my credit cards, God would allow me to do that. It's not His perfect will for my life. And so God allows things. He's allowed things to happen in this world. It wasn't His perfect will for Adam and Eve to eat of that tree of knowledge of good and evil, but He allowed them to do it. God allows things in our life. Doesn't mean He sends them, but when His answer is not yet, it's because He's allowing it. God allowed King Saul to pursue David and try to kill him, throw spears at him, have his soldiers track him and trace him. God was allowing a season of testing and trial in David's life before he got to the throne. But guess what? There was an anointing on David to be king, and Saul was not going to undo that. God wasn't going to allow anything to stop that. He was allowing a season of testing and trying in his life, but he was better for it. Another one I thought about was how God allowed Satan to bring those trials to Job. In fact, we have that narrative, we have that story in the first chapter of Job. It tells us that Satan had to go into the presence of God and ask God for permission. Meaning that God allowed it, but He didn't send it. Satan said, "Oh, the only reason that Job serves you is because you've blessed him so much." God said, "Okay, if you want to, take all of that away, and let's see if he serves me." God allowed Satan to do that. And Job ultimately said, "God gave, and God takes away, and though He slay me, yet I will trust Him. Yet I will trust Him." He said, "You know what? God gave me all this, and if God takes it all away, I'm going to trust Him." He said, even if He takes my life, I'm going to trust Him. Even if He slayed me, I'm going to trust Him. God allowed that season of testing in his life. Certainly Job was praying, "God, stop this craziness. Restore all this stuff. Or fix this situation in my life." But God allowed that situation in his life. And we have to know that God may allow things in our life for us to grow, for us to be strengthened, for us to be conformed to the image of Christ, for us to suffer like He suffered, for us to be conformed to the image of Christ, for us to learn patience, for us to learn joy, for us to learn thankfulness, for us to learn long-suffering. But the Bible teaches us that we can come through the fire and be pure like gold. And so when you have a situation that God doesn't fix and His answer is not yet, it's because He is allowing it, and we will be better for it. The second one is that when God says no, it means He has a higher plan. He has a higher plan. We know that God's ways are higher than our ways. We know that God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We know that His plans are higher than our plans. His strategies are higher than our strategies. That all of those things, they're better than ours. He's a step ahead. He's 10 steps ahead. He's 1,000 steps ahead. People say that somebody that's out in front, they're playing chess when we're playing checkers. That God is playing chess. We're playing checkers. We're playing basic game here. God is so far out ahead of us, plain and simple. When God says no, He has a higher plan because His ways are higher than ours and His thoughts are higher than ours. How many tonight in the chat could say that there's been some things that you walked through, maybe a valley that you walked through, and when you were in it, you didn't understand it, But then when you got to the end of the thing, or you got to the other side of it, you could look back and it all made sense. I think we could all say yes to that. The reason is because you could only see where you were at right then. But when you got through it, you could look back over the whole thing. You had a bird's eye view because you could see the end from the beginning from the end. Well, guess what? God has that vantage point all the time. He knows the end from the beginning from the end. He's from everlasting to everlasting. He sees the end from the beginning the whole time. And that's why His ways are higher. His thoughts, His plans are higher because He has that vantage point. We're looking at one piece of the puzzle in our hand, but God has the whole picture of the puzzle. He's looking at the front of the box. He's the one that made the puzzle. We're just holding the one puzzle piece, and we get frustrated sometimes when that one puzzle piece doesn't make sense, but God has that whole picture in mind. I love the story of Joseph. Of course, his youth, he was mistreated, he was taken out, he was beaten up, he was thrown in a pit, he was stripped of his coat of many colors, he was sold into slavery. His brothers go back and tell Dad that he was killed by an animal. He's a stranger in a new land, he's a slave, he's working for nothing, he's working his life away. Works his way up a little bit. He ends up being lied about, thrown into prison. In prison, he's overlooked and forgotten. In prison, he has that setback, and he ends up in the palace. And his brothers come in during the famine. Joseph had a dream and gained favor with Pharaoh. I'm not trying to tell the whole story, but his brothers come in during the famine, come into Egypt, and they ask for food. And in that moment, all of the pieces to that puzzle of Joseph's life come together. And he actually becomes so overwhelmed with emotion that he has to excuse himself from the presence of his brothers to go and collect himself in a private room. Realizing that the pit and the prison all brought him to the palace so that he could be in position right now to save his brothers and his father from famine. He was so overwhelmed with emotion in that moment because all the puzzle pieces came together. Have you ever put a puzzle together and you just step back and you look at the beauty of it all coming together? That was that moment for Joseph, and he was so overwhelmed with emotion. And as he revealed himself to his brothers through a series of exchanges, they think, oh no, we wronged him in his youth. He's going to exact revenge on us. And he says, no. It's okay. Because what you meant for evil, God meant for good. What you meant for evil was just one piece of the puzzle. But God put all the puzzle pieces together and has brought about this beautiful moment where I can provide for my brothers and my father in this famine. Romans 8:28, it tells us this. Tells us that God is working all things, not just the good things, not just the mediocre things, but God is working together all things for good to those that love God and are called according to His purposes. So that second point tonight is when you have a situation that God doesn't fix, it's because His plan is higher. And I'll close with this. Remember 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. I read it on Sunday. It says, no temptation, no struggle, no trial, no testing, no season, no thing has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will provide a way out so that you can endure it. God is going to provide a way out. He's got a higher plan. He's going to make you better for it. And so I just want to tell you tonight that old story of the sower. Sometimes there's 100-fold increase. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes it falls on good ground. Sometimes it falls on bad ground. but I'm just going to keep going. What do I do when I get a no, when I get a not yet? I'm just going to keep trusting God. I'm just going to keep on sowing. I'm just going to keep on believing. I'm just going to keep on praying. I'm just going to keep on walking. I'm just going to keep on believing that God is for me. And if God's for me, who can be against me? So my encouragement to you is keep on keeping on. All right, thanks for joining me tonight. That's all I got. I hope that it ministered to you. I hope it encouraged somebody tonight. If it was a blessing to you, send it to somebody else. Share it. Send it to somebody you might think it might be a blessing to. I'd love for the word to get beyond these four walls tonight. So thanks for being with us tonight. Be here on Sunday. We're having great services in the house. Be here on Sunday. It's not the same staying home. We'd love to see you in the house, worshiping together, congregating with God's people. That's what the church is. Love to see you this Sunday. Sunday the 28th is Life Group Sunday. Going to be an awesome Sunday. Then we're going quickly into the Easter season. I'm excited about it and all that God is doing at Promise Church 9 and 11 this Sunday. Looking forward to seeing you right here.